Now to add drag and drop functionality, we need to determine where we need to have it function, right? So the plan here is that we should be able to drag different types of slots to other slots in the inventory. So I'm just going to be saving all here. And so we go to the inventory slot widget, and we have a bunch of functions that we can override. Among them, there is one that's called on mouse button down. And in this function, we can actually check if the player is doing, for example, a mouse button of left click, which we will be using to having as a dragging one icon to a different place. So dragging out from mouse event, we can get is mouse button down, and then we can have a branch connecting to that. So from this, we can check, is it going to be a left mouse button? Like so. And this might be a little bit redundant, but it will hopefully make some sense later on. In addition to that, we're going to be checking afterwards here if it is true that it's the left mouse button that is down. We're going to do a detect drag if pressed. And this is where we also choose mouse left button. And what this means is that we create a drag event when this happens. And this one needs to know the mouse event to determine if it is the left mouse button. And by doing this, we also make sure that we can make use of a different event. But for now, we're going to be doing this. We're going to be hooking it up like so, and we're going to leave the false for now. Actually, we should have some more checks here, I think, because we don't want to drag. We don't want to drag an item that is blank, an empty item, basically. We still have a widget there, but we want to pretend like there is no widget for the user. So let's get our item info, and let's break this, and let's get the class, and let's check if it is valid. Like so, and then we can hide the unconnected pins. And let's make sure that we only do this check when that happens. So we add another branch over here, add this check over here, and if it is true, we go and check if drag is pressed. In addition to that, and cleaning up a little bit, we should probably say that we should return also if we get a false over here, if it is a widget that we shouldn't be dragging. And this return value here is something that's going to be saying basically if the event has been handled or not handled. That is to allow the system and possibly other widgets to say that, okay, well, the event wasn't handled by a parent or a widget that was above me, but then maybe me that is a widget below should be doing something about it. So since we didn't actually handle it here, we're going to type in unhandled when we just drag up from this node backwards and just type in unhandled, and we get this. In this case over here, it will return a value here that's going to say if it was either handled or unhandled, so we can just plug it in directly as our return node over there. For now, we can actually do this as well for this one, just to make sure that we have a handled value being sent in all the different ways we can go. Now that we've done that, what we want to do is we want to create another override function. Now we want to do it on drag detected. So you see we have a bunch of drag here. And on drag detected, this is the function that will be called if we press down the left mouse button because of the event we created over here. So let's implement this one, like so. Now when you create a drag and drop event, you have a special kind of blueprint that you usually work with. So if we go out to our third person example again, we do a blueprint class here, and open up the all classes and we choose drag as our type word, you can see we get a drag and drop operation. And this is the kind of blueprint that you usually use for dragging and dropping, because it can contain information about the drag and drop that you're performing. So we'll call this BP, drag drop inventory slot. And that's pretty much all we need to do for now. If we go to our slot again, our widget slot, we can now say that we want to create actor class that's not right. I think it's called let's type in drag and drop. Create drag and drop operation. There we have it. This is the one we want. My bad. So this is what we want to do. We want to create a drag and drop operation when a drag is detected. And like before, we can just send in our operation information here. Now in this creation, we can define a bunch of things here. We can do things like sending tags. We can have a payload, which is basically we send an object into this. And we can have a visual that's different from the widget that we have, or we can send the same one. We can change the pivot point, which is the relation, the widget visual, the drag visual will be in relation to your mouse, and you can also have offsets for it. So for our sake, we're just going to say it's going to look like whatever widget we're currently dragging, because we're in a widget right now, so we can just make use of that. And the payload can also be self, because then we actually send all the information that we have in this widget. And since this widget, we created it so all of them actually have the information of what is stored in them. Me personally, I prefer the top left pivot over here. And that's what it's going to be looking like. So let's try this out and see what it looks like right now, and if it actually works at all. So we pick this up, and we can remove this old breakpoint, and we resume. We remove this breakpoint, and we resume. So now we have dropped it over there, and let's look at our inventory. So now we have our inventory over here, and now if we hold down our mouse key and drag, you can see that it has now created this visual icon of our mouse dragging an inventory item. But if we release the mouse, nothing is actually happening. Although it's not super easy to see. If we pick up a potion of just one instead, you see that we have this inventory item, and we can drop it and nothing really happens, because we're not actually doing anything with this widget when we drop it. So what we need to do is we need to go back to our inventory slot again, and we need to override another function. And now we're going to have to override the on drag on drop actually. So you can see here we have a few other things. We have on drag enter, on drag leave, on drag over, on drag cancel. All of these are things that you can make use of to make your inventory feel more responsive. For example, you can have that when you have on drag enter, that you go in on this specific widget and maybe change the a border or something like that. Maybe make it so it's highlighted, so it's visible to the user to see that, okay, I'm currently about to drop it on this specific slot, for example. So that's something you can make use of for that. But let's move on with our on drop here. So we're just gonna override on drop, and you get on drop also under this category of drag and drop over here, like so. And in this event, what we are going to be doing is we are going to get a reference of self, and we are going to, let's just promote this to a local variable and call it local widget destination. This is to make it a little bit, oh, that didn't. Local widget destination, like so. This is to make it super clear for us what's happening here, because when we detect a drop, the widget that detects a drop is the one that we're actually trying to leave it in. So this widget that itself is the destination. The actual widget that we're trying to drop here, we get from a different place. We get it from our operation here, and we type in payload. We get the payload that we sent with the drag and drop operation, which means that it's the other widget right now. But this payload is just an object, so it doesn't know what it is. It could be anything. So we need to cast this to a slot. And let's type in like so, W inventory slot. And then we realize that this is the... then we can verify that this is a widget that we're actually dropping here, of this type. And from this we want to get the item info, like so. And what we need to do now is basically just switch the item infos into different widgets that we have. So we need to promote this to a local variable just so we have some temporary storage where we can place one of the item infos while we're moving them around. So local item info is a good name, I think. And once we have set that, we can then change the value. So this is the widget that we're dropping. We're storing it over here. That means that we can now use our self over here, the destination, get its, not the self, item info, like so. And we can set the source widget's item info to be what the destination is right now. So we have now made the source to be what the destination is, and now we need to do the same for self as well. So since we are already in the widget self here, we only need to actually do this. We can just set item info like so. And the item info that we want to have here is the local item info that we stored earlier, which was from the source. So now we have switched them around basically here. And the only thing that remains now is that we update these widgets with the new information, because they have been sent the information but they don't visually update it. So we'll just do a... we have it over here, update widget. So this way we have updated the destination, and then we want to have another one like that, but from the source. And we have that one over here. So, of course the order doesn't matter really here, we could have done it in either way. So yeah, so what we're doing is we are storing our local widget destination just so we have a reference to it. Am I actually making use of that, or did I just... Let's check if I'm using that. Find references. Okay, I'm just setting it. I wanted to make it clear, but I apparently didn't use it, so we'll just do this. So we say that our so this widget is the destination where we're dropping things. We want to say that its item info should be set in the source, the payload's item info instead. Then after that we say that our item info should be changed to be whatever the payload came in and said. And then we just update the two widgets, and then we continue with our day here saying this went well. So click in the return value of good there. And then we can go back and try, I think, and we should be able to drag and drop items now. So now if we drag here and we drop over here on this slot over here, you can see that it's actually moving around. Although it's not working perfectly for some reason, so it seems to have introduced some sort of bug. So we'll have to look at that. Some slightly interesting behavior right now. Anyway, let's continue with that. So to demonstrate what's going wrong here, we will be checking out the things we talked about earlier when it comes to these events that we have. So if we go to the inventory slot, and here in the graph we have these functions that we could override. We could override on drag enter. We're going to click on that, and we're going to override the other one that says on drag leave. And for these we're going to be creating some functions that allow us to show that we're highlighting a widget. So let's create a custom event, and we'll call this just highlight, and we'll create another custom event, and we'll call this remove highlight. So, and then we're gonna be saying that when we enter, we're gonna highlight, and when we leave, we're gonna remove highlight. So what we're going to be doing to highlight this, we're just gonna make something really simple. We're gonna do the following. Our image icon over here has the color and opacity, and I believe that this one colors whatever is inserted into it. So if we were to make this, for example, yellow, and we play and we pick up a health potion, our health potion should now appear more yellowy than it was before. So that is one way we can sort of highlight. You can make something more fancy and more pretty than this, but this is an easy way for us to do this. So color and opacity is what we're going to be setting, and we're going to be setting it for the image. So we have our image icon over here, set color and opacity. I'm going to make a duplicate of this one, and when we highlight, we're going to set this to a, let's say, yellow color, because that's sort of easy to see. And when we're not highlighting, we're going to set it back to white, which it is to begin with. And yeah, so this is just to highlight what is going to go, or what is going wrong here with the drag and drop right now. Because if we pick this up and we start dragging this, you can't see because we don't have an image on that that's looking. Okay, let's do, would have been easier. The reason it's a problem is because if you look on the inventory, you can see we have these walnut backgrounds, and mixing this color with the yellow color doesn't it doesn't show it off as clearly as I wanted it to. So we'll find a different way to make this highlighted better by we did our inventory slot go there. We can let us change our structure icon to something lighter. Let's do metal aluminium here. That one looks fairly light. So let's see what it looks like if we are to use this. So this is what it looks like right now, and if we drag over it, you can see it becomes slightly yellowy. And now you can see that when we're moving around, this is the tile that becomes slightly yellowy, is the one that we're going to be dropping it at. But you can see sometimes that it sort of flickers. Let's see if we can find a pixel where this happens. Where one of the tiles I'm hovering over isn't actually... It's going to be easier if I do it like this, I think. So I moved it over here now. Let's try to move it to the left here. You can see that it's flickering and unselecting and selecting. And this is an issue. I'm not entirely sure of what's causing it, but part of the issue is probably due to the size of the widget itself here. I'm not entirely sure how it's doing its check to see exactly where it's supposed to be dropping things, but it's not always the mouse, it seems. If we were to have an inventory which would have spaces in between the slots, then that would lead to those spaces not being actual inventory slots. And if we were to drop anything there, then we would get this result of it, like trying to drop it back to the slot where it is. But we don't actually have those. Well, technically there could be some pixel, I guess, but we have said that we should not have any spaces in between. So it shouldn't really be happening. But a way to work around this is, just so you now know why this is happening, let's go back to our... on drag detected is where we decide that we should be creating a drag and drop operation. So here we can actually do a different widget than what we used before as our default drag visual. If we were to... let's go to our blueprints. Let's save all. Let's create a duplicate of inventory slots. And let's call that one inventory slot small. Then we go in and edit that one a little bit, and we'll change the size box from being 100 to, let's say, 25 times 25, so a quarter. So much smaller. Actually, let's try 40 by 40. Because we still want to be able to determine what's happening inside of it. Since now we made it so small, these fonts are not going to be working that well. So what we will be doing is we will be removing the item name, which is a debug thing that we are having anyway, so we shouldn't be needing it. And we can remove the amount here. You could also just scale everything down if you wanted to keep all of this information. But yeah, so now we have miniaturized our little widget. So now we have some errors, which we can see here. And if we go and click on one of them, you will see that it wants to try and do, because we duplicated it, we get all of the other code, and we're not actually interested in stuff like the drop functionality and stuff like that on this one. So we're actually just going to be removing all of this, like so. And then you still see we have some issues here, and it's because it's trying to do things like setting textures and text and stuff like that to things that we have now removed. And we only want to set the image icon, but we want to keep that it's setting it from the item info that we're sending in. So we'll do like this, we'll just disconnect it like so. You can remove everything after here if you want to. But if we go back to the other normal inventory slot now, we can actually create a widget. And we can tell it to be of the type small that we just created, like so. And just to show, create a copy of this just to keep the other one as is, but we'll work around it. We'll not actually make use of it. And we'll hook up this over here. And now we do like so instead. So we're gonna have self still in the payload, because that's still gonna be the widget that we're sending through. But when it comes to the drag default visual, we're gonna be using this widget that we just created instead. Everything else will be kept the same. And we need to send in an item info here, because that's how we it has exposed on spawn just like normal inventory widget, which means that it will get the look that we're after. So if we were to do this now, pick up an item and then check it, you can see that when we drag off here, it's going to be a very much smaller icon that we're running around with. And if we were to place it over here and drag it over here, you can see that we're not having the same glitchiness as before. It's somehow related to the size of the icon and the detection of where to drop it. An issue that we get with this highlighting though, if we want to keep the highlight, is that when we have dropped it, we can see that it's being yellow. It's keeping its yellow color. So that's something we want to fix as well. So inventory slot, on drop, and let's see here. We want to update this is self, so the destination, this one. So we'll just remove highlights, basically, like so. We can do something like this also. So now hopefully when we have dragged something, it will just be highlighting as long as we're actually dragging it. And once we have dropped it, it should be going back to its normal color like it's doing right now. And yeah. Okay. The next part is that we are not able to drop these items on the ground for right now. If we were to pick up this again, and we pick it up and we drag it over here, nothing happens. It's not like our slots over here where something is actually being moved around. The issue is that when we're dragging this and dropping it over here, nothing is listening for it to be dropped over here, because what we're dropping it on over here is not actually a slot. It is the normal HUD that we have created. So what we need to do is now create a bit of communication between the slot and the HUD to make sure that the user interface knows what it's supposed to do if we have dropped a slot widget on the HUD, which means basically that we're trying to drop it on the ground. So let's start with doing that. To demonstrate this, we can go into our inventory slots and we can override another function here, and we can find the on drag cancelled. Let's implement that. And here we can actually just print out a string for now. And we can say dragged item cancelled, like so. So let's go back in and play, and we pick up this item and we drag around here. You can see we don't get any print messages being done at all. And then we drop it over here and you can see dragged item cancelled. So that's what's happening right now. We're getting a dragged item cancelled message. So going back to our, not the small one, we go back to our item slot, inventory slots. What we can do here is we can make an event dispatcher, a delegate here. And we can find that furthest down in the list over here. We can create an event dispatcher here. Let's call it dragged item dropped. And this one we want to have an input for. That's going to be the item, so an item info structure. So that did not work. Item to drop. So by dragging this out here now like so and saying call, we're basically saying that anybody who's interested in knowing this, we have currently dropped this item. And we want to fill this item info also with our item info from our widget. And yeah, that's all we want to do in that regard. However, when this happens, we also want to remove this from our widget. So we want to take this item info, want to set its members, and we want to clear them out basically. So expose all the pins, and now it's going to be set to all the default values here, because this, when we are not setting anything, that's what it's going to be doing. And after that we can also make sure to update the widget so it's actually getting the information that we to visually display that we've cleared everything out. So if we were to try this again now, see, we have this item, we can drag it around, we can drop it in our inventory, and when we drop it over here, it disappears from our inventory now. But there's nobody around to hear that we have dropped the item and to do something about that. So that's what we need to fix now. So we will do the following. We will go into our inventory container. And here we are adding our widget slots, and that's the requirement for an event dispatcher, that anybody who wants to listen to an event that's dispatched by something needs to at some point have a reference to the item so that they can make sure to listen to those things. So we'll just give ourselves a little bit of space here so we can face in some code. We can double click over there to get a little thing, and now we can say that we have an inventory slot widget over here, and we say that we want to bind event. Bind to animation event, no. Bind to no. There, bind event to dragged item dropped. So we connect this up like so. And now we say that we want to listen to it, but now we need to define what are we supposed to do when this happens. So we'll drag off from this event, and we'll add an event here, a custom event, and we'll call it inventory item dropped. And you see it gets the signature of the same as the event that we were listening to over here. Now what we can do in this stage is, because we're still not doing anything with this, so now we need to decide how to handle this information. That is all for this episode. Hope to see you in the next one. Keep on learning. Take care.